Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the City of Lebanon Plan Commission meeting, September 20th, 21. Call the meeting to order. Kelly, the roll call, please.
Ali Mullen. Here. Ashley Paddock.
Here.
John Lassley.
Here.
Kevin Krulik.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Jeremy Lawler. Absent. Brian Tandy.
Here.
Dan Bayshore.
Here.
Lori Gross. Here.
Okay. Everybody had a chance to read their minutes? Have them? I attend a motion for approval of the minutes, please.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes.
We have a motion. We have a second.
Second.
When we have a second. Okay. Call for the roll, please.
Ali Mullen.
Yes.
Ashley Paddock.
Yes.
John Lassley.
Yes.
Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Dan Bayshore.
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to announce that docket number 2145 has been withdrawn by the applicant, and docket number 2146 has been withdrawn by the applicant. So if you're here this evening for docket 2145 and docket 2146, that's the primary plat for planned business industrial, and it's on the Cox Avenue. Those two have been pulled. Okay? So we will now get started on docket number 2138. Ben, come to the front.
Evening, Commission members. Docket 2138 is a development plan request for the Homewood Health Campus that is at 2494 North Lebanon Street. They are working on an addition to their existing facility in that location. They're going to bring up the screen for you here. This just kind of shows you overall what the site looks like now. This is on North Lebanon Street. The property here is Goodwill's to the south. There is a homeowner that lives to the west of the property. And then here's a site here. The addition fits kind of in this area just on the southwest corner of the building. So walk through again. This is a development plan application. So this is where staff has a chance to review and ensure that they meet all the standards of the ordinance, that we review it also then for technical items like drainage and infrastructure, which we have done in this case. And so just kind of give them some quick highlights here. This is about just a little over a 5,000 square foot addition to the existing building. And then the improvements will include additional drainage infrastructure to accommodate the additional impervious surface. Kind of walking through, I won't walk through all of the TAC comments, but the primary issue, I guess, that we're looking to address, and we're still working on the exact solution and how that gets implemented, was based on drainage. I don't know if you recall last month, the adjacent property owner to the west spoke at the end of the meeting, indicate they've had some drainage problems. Over time, as the area around them has developed, we can't necessarily say it was this property, this applicant specifically, but over time there's been development that's happened to their east and to their south. This caused water to back up on their property. We did have the applicant look at some of the other development plans for the properties around it and think we've uncovered what may be the issue. The backside of the Goodwill site, they raised up the elevation, the back part of that site, and the water that kind of naturally drained in that area now we think is getting blocked up. So we do have a solution for that, determining how best to implement that. So certainly in terms of any approvals related to this, we want to make sure that there is a condition that we have on that they adequately address any remaining TAC comments, which include getting drainage approval and making sure we finalize that solution and get that addressed. In terms of other standards, again, this is an addition to the existing building. It's not actually adding any additional bedrooms. I think they're relocating some existing bedrooms to this new facility, so it doesn't require any additional parking spaces because there really isn't any additional bedrooms. They're not providing any additional lighting or landscaping as part of this project, and there's no additional signage as it's just an expansion of the existing building. Architecture will be intended to match the existing architecture of the facility, so they meet all of our architecture requirements. In light of all of these items and review of the submitted development plan as presented, planning staff has found compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance requirements, and we recommend approval of the subject development plan condition on the following condition, and that is, as I mentioned, TAC comments, that they adequately address any remaining City of Lebanon Technical Advisory Committee comments prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone on the board have a question for Ben? Not hearing any men, is anybody representing the applicant here? They can come forward.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Bethany Hope, and I'm the civil engineer with Universal Design Associates representing the project.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions, or is there anything I need to go over?
The only question I think that we have, and that you were working on, is on the drainage.
Yes, we're working on the drainage, yes.
Anyone else have a question? Okay, seeing no other questions, and I'll close this part, and we'll open up to the public hearing. Anyone that has a comment on this needs to come forward and give your name and address.
You want me to come up?
Yeah, you have to come, yeah, come up. Yeah, and you have 3 minutes to speak, okay?
I'll take that one.
Okay.
We're here from last meeting, Jeff from
Yeah.
Ernest Stanley. Yeah, as long as it's being addressed, we're fine with everything they're doing, but like we explained before, we're really in trouble over there as far as drainage, so,
And the problem did start before Goodwill was there. It just got worse. I mean, it started when they built the facility, and it worsened when Goodwill.
right. But as long as it's being addressed and we're not gonna end up underwater, were you a civil engineer? So that's being addressed, right? Oh, was there any way we could hook up on this project to the city sewer? I mean, is there an opportunity for that? You brought that up last time.
I'll talk to you later about it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and we were wondering, because we haven't really seen a drawing of how close it's getting to us. Because I know we have an easement we agreed to at the time. Okay. All right, that's all we have.
All right, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak on this issue? Not seeing anyone coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. Ben, would you like to come back, please?
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on the drainage, and Kevin could fill in where I'm misspeaking or not quite filling in the details correctly, but we're working on, there's an existing tile that runs into the Goodwill site that helps drain that site. We're looking at an opportunity to extend that tile further north into the applicant's property that'll help drain that water out off of their property where it's getting stopped up now. By doing that, that'll also get the water off their site to that tile and get it removed from that property at a quicker pace than it is now. Right now, the water basically just sits in the back corner of the applicant's property and the back corner of their property and just sits there until it dissipates naturally. So this, hopefully by adding that drainage tile, should address that situation, get the water flowing out of there a little bit quicker and a little bit better. In terms of their question about sanitary sewer, we'd have to look and see where the sanitary sewer is in terms of location to see whether it's accessible to them. All they would really have to do in that case is pay availability fees to the Lebanon utilities if it's available to them, and then they can connect. So we can work with them, and we've got their contact information, just kind of get them some additional information about where sanitary sewer is located. I don't know where it is right now in terms of this location, but we just have to figure that out first. If it's not along the street and it's a ways away, it'd be kind of expensive to get it to them, but we can take a look at that and figure out what that possibility is. And then in terms of the setback, it does meet the required setback in the zoning district, and I just looked it up and lost my place, but I'll find it again. The building is set back, it looks like approximately 30 feet, a little over 30 feet from that western property line, and that does meet our 25-foot setback for that zoning district. Any other questions for me?
Any other questions for Ben?
Yeah, so basically, I'll access the existing what's already on the site that's a dry basin. So we're basically just kind of sharing capacity now to make it even out, so water will all drain into those two.
So basically what's happening right now is the water, the low point is at that back corner of the applicant's property, the back corner of the adjacent homeowner's property, and the water doesn't have anywhere to go from there. So it all just collects there until it just dissipates or evaporates. So what this will do is there's a tile, and Kevin, maybe you can provide some information on where it goes from the Goodwill site, but there's a tile that drains the Goodwill site.
Right.
So if we can extend that north, we can pick up the water that right now is just collecting there and just get rid of it.
Yeah, it's,
It'll still be on their site, but then it'll go.
But rather than it just sitting there waiting to evaporate, it'll be collected in that drainage tile and run down to a detention area. So
They're required to build a detention area on site to collect the runoff from the new building. It's in that southwest corner, so I think by even just lowering that southwest corner to create a detention area, it's going to help dry up the surrounding area. It's immediately adjacent to the north of Goodwill's detention area. There is a drainage tile that goes across the Goodwill detention area, so what we are asking them to do is to extend that drainage tile to also connect to there, so it does have some sort of a pipe outlet. I really can't speak to, the Stanley statement about it started being a problem when Homewood was built. The only thing I can tell you is that back corner is low. That back corner doesn't have a really great way to drain out. I don't know if historically the water all drained all the way out to 39. I kind of guess that's what has happened over the years. So it's really tough for us to figure out now. I mean, obviously there's a lot of mature trees there, so it doesn't seem that southwest corner immediately was impacted. But obviously it's a lower wet area. We're also working with Goodwill. The outlet of their pond flows into a ditch that goes back to the west, then outlets through a control structure into a detention area behind Drainage Solutions, or what used to be Carter Lee Lumber. And then that detention area outlets into the storm sewer system that goes down through the Walmart site. So it's a complicated system. We're thinking that the extension of that tile will help to prevent anything getting worse. But it's a difficult system. It's a difficult. There's no immediate infrastructure in the area to tie into from a storm sewer standpoint. And while we're talking about infrastructure, the sanitary sewer isn't much closer. There is a manhole basically right at the north entrance into Homewood. That'd be the closest sanitary sewer manhole, but happy to talk about that more in the future. So we're doing the best we can to work with Ms. Hope and Universal Design to make sure we're not making the situation any worse and try to improve it as best we can.
Okay. Thanks, Kevin. Any other things, Ben? Any other questions for Ben? Okay. I would entertain a motion for docket number 2138.
I would motion to approve docket 21-38 contingent on the TAC comments and any drainage issues.
Okay, you need a second? We have a motion and a second. Kelly, would you ask for the roll, please?
John Lastly,
Aye.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ellie Mullen,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is docket number 2141. United Development requesting development plan approval for the proposed industrial building to be constructed at 820 South State Road 39. The property is zoned PBI, Planned Business Industrial. Ben?
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. This site's got a little bit of history to it. This is a project that actually came to the BZA and Plan Commission in 2015. It received a number of different variances. It looks like probably about a dozen variances related to both site and building. So those variances were approved at that time, and actually there was a development plan that was approved at that time. As you can obviously see, the building was never constructed in 2015 and has sat vacant since that time, and now the applicant is ready to begin construction. development plans do have a clock on them. They're only valid for 18 months, I think 18 or 24 months. And so we are certainly well past that timeline, so they have to come back in for additional development plan approval. Again, just to verify if any of our standards have changed, they'd have to update their plans to make sure that they meet all of our appropriate standards. The variants, however, they are a permanent change and a permanent approval, so those run with the land, so the variances are still in place from that previous approval in 2015. And then they did, at the last BZA meeting on September 7th, they did come in for an additional variance, just to allow them some additional architectural metal on the rear of the building, which is where the loading docks are located. So they did get some flexibility to allow that to be architectural metal panels, so they wouldn't have to cut through concrete and brick and stone in order to add docks if their tenant needs it. So right now it is a speculative industrial building, so they don't have a tenant identified, so they did want that flexibility if a tenant needed additional dock space or overhead doors. And those architectural metal panels are pretty easy just to pop out and cut, as opposed to what masonry would be. So that's a little bit of the history on the site. If they want to bring up the screen, kind of talk a little about the location. Again, this is on State Road 39. This is on the west side of State Road 39, and this is Enterprise Drive, the entrance to the Lebanon Business Park. So it's just on the south side of that intersection here. A little bit of an odd shape, and then also with the corner lot, it does have some additional setbacks that they had to meet for the front, et cetera. So let me pull up the development plan set. Make sure I get you the right one here. I think it's this one. So the site itself has not changed much from what was approved in 2015. The primary change has been to the architecture and design of the building itself. And let me zoom in a little bit here so that we can actually see it a little bit. So the building is oriented such that the front faces out towards State Road 39. And the primary employee/customer parking area would be on the State Road 39 side, and then some on the north side adjacent to Enterprise Drive. The entrance to the site then is located on the western end here on Enterprise. You can kind of see it. Let me go back up here. The entrance here to the site is here, and then again, I talked about the truck access area. It'll all be on the rear of the building, kind of facing to the west. Where they're currently planning to have a couple of loading docks, but they then have the flexibility, as you can see, to add more on the back of the building if they've got a tenant that needs them. They are planning a dry detention area at the far west end of the site here, and will be adding the required sidewalks along Enterprise and State Road 39 per the ordinance requirements. They also then meet, except for variances, everything related to landscape architecture or landscape design for the site. I'm just going to go find that. It's usually one of the last pages. Let's see if it is on this one. It is not. It's in the middle somewhere. Here we go. I see trees. That means I'm close. Here's a landscape plan. As you can see, they've provided all the required landscaping out along the parking lot perimeter that you see here, as well as the building-based landscaping that's required because it's in the thoroughfare overlay district. And you'll see that same landscape continue around the north side of the parking area, parking lot perimeter, building-based landscaping. And then part of their requirements in terms of the loading docks that are being visible from Enterprise Drive, they were required some additional landscaping, so you can see a solid row of evergreens along the Enterprise Drive edge in order to screen that back area. And then also landscaping around the dry detention to the back. So they have met all the required landscaping requirements you see here. Kind of walking through, I won't again go through all the TAC comments, but we do have a series of TAC comments that they're working on addressing, and those all have to be finalized prior to receiving any building permits, and that's part of our condition of approval. In terms of parking, again, this is a speculative building, so what we essentially did in this case is look at a general parking that you typically see in like a logistics or manufacturing facility, which is one space per employee on the largest shift, plus one space for every vehicle using the operation of that facility. So in this case, based on just some general requirements that the applicant sees in the industry, they provided 59 spaces. We will, when a user goes in there, we will review the parking requirements to make sure that it's adequately parked. So if they end up having a facility in here that's got 80 people on the largest shift, then we'll have to address that and provide some additional parking. We don't think that that's going to be the case on this size building, though. In terms of the lighting plan, they have submitted a lighting plan that meets all our standards, so that has been satisfied. And again, I talked a little bit about the landscaping and buffer yard requirements that they have met. On signage, certainly, as I mentioned, this is a speculative building, so they don't have any signage plans at this time. So once the tenants are identified, we just expect that they'd submit a signage plan for approval that meets all the applicable standards. And again, in terms of the architecture, they did receive a number of variances related to architecture in 2015 that they are still adhering to. And then with the additional approval related to the architectural metal, and you kind of get an idea here. This top is the front elevation. It's 50% masonry and then 50% architectural metal panel, and you can see on the sides what they've done. They've wrapped the masonry about halfway down the sides, and the rest is architectural metal, and that's what you see on the back would be the architectural metal panel. This isn't the standing seam metal like the old post-frame buildings. This is more of an actual panel that they fit together. So it is a newer product. It's an insulated product, so it's not quite the same as what you usually saw a metal building made out of. This is a much higher standard in terms of a metal panel, but it is metal in terms of how our ordinance defines it. So with that then, staff recommendation and review of the submitted development plan, we find compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance requirements, and we recommend approval contingent on the following conditions. And one is the TAC comments, that they adequately address any remaining TAC comments prior to seeking application for any building permits. And number two, the signage plan, that they submit a signage plan indicating location and elevations of all proposed signs and receive sign permits before any sign installation. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, anyone on the board have a question for Ben?
Ben, did I see they just put up a new light right there? Is that
Yeah, I don't know,
right there on
Kevin,
the
you know when
corner?
exactly that went in, but yeah, there is a new,
Sometime in the last 30 days, I think it went active, but
So
that
it's
was a
right there on
state
that corner.
project.
yeah, it is right there on that corner.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, would the applicant come forward, please?
Good evening. I'm Aaron Hurt with Civil and Environmental Consultants. We're a civil engineer for United Development and Merit Contracting. I think Ben did a really good job explaining kind of where we're at. It just hasn't worked out yet for them to start construction, but they're hopeful to do that soon. So I'm happy to take any questions you have.
Okay, any questions for the applicant from the board? Not hearing any questions? Okay, we'll open up to the audience now. So anyone like to come forward and speak about this project, please give your name and 3 minutes to talk, please. See anybody? Okay, don't see anyone coming forward, so we'll close the public hearing. Okay, so we would need, Ben, you want to, ready for a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept docket 21-41 as long as all the TAC comments and so forth are taken care of.
I'll second.
Okay, have a roll call, please.
John Leslie?
Yes?
Dan Bayshore?
Yes.
Kevin Krulik?
Yes.
Keith Campbell?
Yes.
Ashley Paddock?
Yes.
Brian Tandy?
Yes.
Ally Mullen?
Yes.
Lori Gross?
Okay. Okay, now the new business, docket number 2143, Lebanon Gateway Properties requesting development plan approval to construct a new commercial building to be located at 1511 West South Street, Lebanon Gateway Marketplace, Lot 4. The property is zoned PUD, which is Planned Unit Development. Ben?
Very good, thank you, Mr. Campbell. This is Lot 4 of Lebanon Gateway Marketplace, and the applicant is proposing a building that's relatively similar to the building that's out there now that Moe's Southwest Grill is located in. This will be a multi-tenant retail space here that they'll be building on this site, and this is actually directly adjacent to the east of the Moe's building. So they pull up the screen here and kind of give you an idea. The Moe's is just off the screen here to the west, and then this is Ping Avenue, the primary drive into the development to the east. So this is what you see here is the proposed building. Again, it's a very similar layout to what is to the west of the Moe's building. This one does have a drive-through as well, so they've got a common drive here to the west that they share with Moe's. and then they have a drive-through that comes around the south and east sides of the building and then exits out here. So they do have the common drive access to the south, and then also a second drive on Ping that you see right here. And we did spend a lot of time with City Engineer Mr. Krulik determining the appropriate location for that to make sure that we're not, it was originally proposed further to the north, closer to the intersection. We felt like that if folks were going to try to turn left out of here, that might cause problems with the left turn lanes on Ping Avenue. So we wanted to get it a little further away to allow for additional queuing on Ping Avenue in the left turn lane before it would cause any backups. But we have also accommodated and tried to encourage people, as you can see here, so that the exit from the drive-through lane is back to the left and around to this primary entrance to the south. So we're trying to, while we're not going to stop people from turning left out here on this exit onto Ping, we are going to try to encourage people to wrap back around the building and come back out to the south, just to try to keep traffic flowing around the building. You see here, again, this is all speculative right now, and so we have worked with them in terms of what's appropriate in terms of parking based on what we'd see for the types of uses that might go in a commercial building. But again, as I mentioned on the last application, we will be reviewing that as tenants start moving in to make sure we have accommodated the correct number of parking. I would imagine that we've got appropriate parking for those 4 tenant spaces in this building to accommodate that. The primary parking for customers is to the north of the building. South Street is just off the screen here. So that's all the primary customer parking, and then you've got some additional parking in the back that likely will be employee parking for those uses. The dumpster enclosure is located also in this south corner of the building here. Let me now go and actually the landscape plan isn't highlighted on the bookmark, so let me do a quick scroll here and find that. There we go. So here's a landscape plan. Again, they have met all the landscape requirements of both our ordinance and the PUD. And you see here they've got buffer and parking lot perimeter landscaping along South Street and along the Ping Avenue Drive here. They have all the required interior and building-based landscaping around the building. And one additional change that we made just the last couple months, you'll recall we did an amendment to this PUD here that allows some additional flexibility on setbacks on Ping. So what they've actually done here is rather than there being a 10-foot setback for this drive, it's actually 7 feet. In exchange, then they had to provide some additional landscaping. They had to increase the percentage of landscaping, so that's why you kind of see a double row of shrubs and then trees located here. In the location where they're slightly less than the 10-foot required, they had to provide some additional landscaping to screen that, so that's what you see located here. Otherwise, though, they have met all the required landscaping in terms of parking lot perimeter and building-based landscaping, so that's what you kind of see represented here. And now let me go and I'll kind of show you the building. It's taking a second to open it up here. Let's try that again. Here we go. So here now is then the building elevation. It's a little hard to see because there's so many notes on it, but I'll zoom in a little bit. This again, I think the architecture and design is very similar to the Moe's building that's out there now. Primary materials are block and brick and additional masonry. You kind of see where this is the front elevation here, and you see that architecture is carried all the way around the building. You got space for 4 tenants that you see here. There is a drive-through window on one side of the building and then a pickup window on the other. I think the developer had noticed that they're getting a lot of inquiries about having a space with a pickup window. Certainly with what we've been going through over the last 18 months, a lot of people are ordering online and then just going to a pickup window. So the second space wouldn't have an order, there wouldn't be an order sign there. It would literally be a place for people to drive up, pick up their order from online at the window and drive out. So there's not as much of an issue with queuing there, but it does allow them some flexibility to get a tenant in there that has those kind of needs. So that's the architecture of the building. And then I'll walk through just a couple more elements. Again, I won't go through all the TAC comments because there's a lot of them, but they have worked on addressing all those at this time. They have met all the required development standards for the planned business commercial zoning district and part of the PUD ordinance that's associated with it. Again, we talked about that the required parking will be determined, and we'll just review those as tenants move in, but we feel pretty confident that they've got plenty of parking spaces, and they also have provided the required bike racks that we require in a thoroughfare overlay district and the connectivity out to South Street. Lighting, they have submitted a photometric plan and cut sheets for lighting fixtures to meet all of our standards, so they have addressed that item. And again, we talked about the landscaping, meet all those. On the signage plan, again, this is very similar to the last one in that it's a speculative building, so they don't have tenant spaces identified, but they will have tenant space for signage for each one, wall signage for each one of those tenants. And then there is an overall multi-tenant sign for the overall development on State Road 32. So there won't be an individual ground sign on State Road 32 for this lot, but they could use the multi-tenant sign for signage out on State Road 32. And again, we talked a little bit about the architecture review. So in this one, again, staff recommendation, we find compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance and recommend approval of the development plan contingent on the following conditions. Identified TAC comments that they adequately addressed any remaining technical advisory committee comments prior to application for building permits. And I forgot one there on the signage plan as well, make sure that they had provided appropriate signage plan. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions for Ben?
I don't have a question for Ben. I do have one for Kevin, though. You had talked about going left. I guess I'll ask both of you. You were talking about going left. Do you feel that's going to be an issue as far as, is there a way of sending everybody right out of there on the ping?
The problem that we looked at is sending everybody right, and that was, certainly an initial reaction to this was that it needs to be right out only. The problem is right doesn't, right, given the nature of the businesses that would come into this building, they're most likely going to be coming from 32 and probably also predominantly from the interstate. So to send them right onto Sam Ralston puts them in a situation where they're most likely going to do a U-turn. Yeah, they're either going to be lost or they're going to do a U-turn unless they live here in Lebanon.
Right.
So we just felt it really wouldn't be effective because there is no way for them to conveniently get back to the interstate or State Road 32, especially if they're headed back to the west. Even if they turn on to Gateway Drive, when they get back up to 32, they can only go right again. So it ends up in a vicious circle. So although the left turns out of there are maybe not ideal, but we looked at several case studies with the developer and on our own, and the configuration is not unheard of, and in fact is pretty common. In fact, we see a lot more, concerning layouts in commercial areas that seem to function just fine. So ultimately, it was an education process of us to get comfortable with this and do our research and say that it may be difficult at times to get in and out of there, but we think it's going to function. It functions in other areas, and we think ultimately people will figure out that the best way to get out of there is not to wait to turn left out of there. It's to take a left through the parking lot, come back down the Gateway.
Yeah.
And then
Okay. Yep, just curious.
And John, we also looked and trying to determine exactly where that drive will be located. We did look in this location that allows for 7 to 8 cars to queue in the left turn lane on Ping before it would block this drive. So we felt like with the cycle of the lights that would be sufficient to get people in the lane and get them out before we'd start blocking traffic.
That was my biggest concern as far as, okay.
Okay, hey, Ben, I got a question on the dumpster.
Yes, sir.
Is that going to be large enough for the 4 tenants?
I don't recall what the exact size of the dumpster is being proposed in there, but the applicant certainly is a very experienced commercial developer and knows the type of users he's trying to attract there, and I'm sure he's going to make sure he's got an adequately sized dumpster. But I'll let maybe the applicant knows what size being proposed and could address that. But they're certainly a very experienced commercial developer. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't think so.
Okay. Would the applicant come forward, please?
Dylan Reynolds, the civil engineer with Space Co., representing Kenmar, the developer. In response to your dumpster question, that was I don't know the size offhand. That was the size sent to me that the developer requested. So kind of just like Ben, I'm assuming that he's done his research for the tenants that he's chasing, and it's sized accordingly.
Yeah, I just know that we've had some issues on a couple other places. I just want to make sure not out there.
Right.
Okay.
Happy to answer any other questions.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions for the applicant? Anyone? Okay, not seeing any. Have anything else you want to say to us before I open up the hearing?
That's all I have.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I'd open it up to the public for comments if we have any, please. Come forward, give your name and address, and you have 3 minutes to speak. You want to come speak or not? Okay, I don't,
To your point, just looking at the site plan, the dumpster pad that it sits on is about 23 by 26. So, I mean, that's a big dumpster pad, and although there's a smaller enclosure within it that is probably about 12 foot by 12 foot, it could easily be expanded to
Okay.
house more than one
as
dumpster.
long as it's big enough, that's all I want. Okay, I'll close the public hearing now, and then I would entertain a motion for docket number 2143.
Make a motion to approve the development plan contingent on the following conditions, and that would be if they meet all the TAC comments from the City of Lebanon.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Kelly, would you call the roll, please?
John Lastly,
Yes?
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes?
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ellie Mullen. Yes. Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay, next item on the agenda is docket number 2144. Beazer Homes LLP requesting initial zoning for a voluntary annexation of 33.74 acres into the corporate city boundaries. The parcel is located on the northwest side of State Road 39 North and County Road 300 North. Ben?
Projects in my head.
All right, I will go through first a little bit of the process here. This is a multi-step process as it relates to a development like this, and certainly where it includes annexation. So what is before you tonight, this property is currently under county jurisdiction, under county zoning. We have received a voluntary annexation from the site by the applicant, supported by the property owners. As part of that process of annexing any property in the city of Lebanon, the Plan Commission's responsibility is to provide a recommendation to the council on the zoning once it's annexed. So that's the step that's taking place here tonight, is essentially for the Plan Commission to evaluate and review the comprehensive plan and future land use designation for this property, and determine once the annexation is effective, based on an adoption by the council, what zoning classification should be placed on it. I can say that Beazer Homes is the petitioner, and they do intend to develop this as a single-family residential neighborhood. There are no plans, conceptual plans that have been submitted to our office for the site yet. That will actually come at a later step. We actually can't legally review the plans yet because it's not annexed and we don't have planning jurisdiction. So until the property is annexed and that annexation is effective, which is probably about 50 days from now, we don't even have the ability to review, and the Plan Commission doesn't have the authority to review a preliminary plan for this site. So what we have tonight is the annexation request, and the Plan Commission's responsibility as part of that annexation request, that process is to provide a recommendation to the council on a City of Lebanon zoning district to apply to this property. So that's what's before you tonight. So if they want to pull up the screen, kind of give you an idea what we're talking about. This annexation is going to happen in 2 stages. Contiguity requirements by the state require 1/8 contiguous. So you basically look at where it's contiguous to existing city limits, which is along this southern boundary, and then you multiply that distance where it's contiguous by 8, and that gets you what the perimeter of the annexation could be. So what they're actually going to do is in 2 phases. They will annex this portion, about 33 acres that you see here, and then once that annexation is effective, they will come back to annex the remainder of the property, which is essentially this remaining portion here. So that'll happen about, like you said, about 50, 60 days from now. They'll come in with another annexation petition to bring in that second piece of this property. Sometime during that day, we'll probably also come through and start their development plan approvals for the site, for this 33 acres first, and then extend that approval to the rest of it, if all goes well and it's approved, to the rest of that site when the annexation is effective. So again, so tonight we don't have any specific plans for the site. We don't have how many homes, what size lots. They are still working on those details. They will submit them at an appropriate time, and we will notify adjacent property owners again when that comes in. It'll be likely a preliminary plan approval. We'll provide notices again, just like we did for this site. So that'll be coming probably a couple months from now. So what's before you tonight again is just the recommendation for the annexation. In terms of the zoning, yeah, this is 100% voluntary annexation that's will be considered by the council. As part of that process, we're required to review the comprehensive plan designation for this site and determine what would be appropriate zoning district, appropriate type of land use. So the Lebanon Comprehensive Plan, the future land use map, designates this area for single-family residential land uses, and that designation provides for a range of different residential types. And because the proposed annexation is at the current edge of the city limits, the development plan in the general vicinity is agricultural and large lot single-family residential. But if you go a quarter mile to the south, you're in the city. So this is just on the edge of existing development. But again, this is the comprehensive plan designates this area for residential uses. Because there is not a conceptual plan for this site, the ordinance would suggest that we bring it in under the SF zoning district, which is our least dense residential zoning classification. And so given the fact that there is not a development proposal at this time, we have recommended to the Plan Commission that the Plan Commission recommend the single-family residential zoning classification, the SF zoning classification, to the Common Council for the proposed annexed territory. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board to Ben?
Go ahead.
It's probably the same question.
The city, as far as, so right there at 300 on the, which would be the south side, does the city go right to 300?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Brandenburg property on the south side of this is annexed to the city of Lebanon. That's where this property is contiguous, is to the Brandenburg property that's on the south side of 300. That was just annexed just a few months ago.
So basically from the south to the north to 300, right there on 300 is where it's city.
Yes, correct. And that's the only place that's contiguous, is that one property to the south.
But it does not cross 300 at this
The
time.
city limits does not cross 300 at this time. Correct.
I guess my question is different. So we're doing single family, but they come back here, we'll be able to designate whether it's SF2, SF, all that.
If they determined some other zoning district other than SF, it will have to come back to the Plan Commission and Council. So at this point, we're placing it in our essentially default zoning district because there's not a development proposal, and that's specified by the ordinance as being the SF zoning district.
Okay, any other questions for Ben?
Does Beazer own the property, Ben, at this point?
No.
So it's actually,
It's owned by,
I tried to read it, but
yeah, I can't quite read it either.
I'm getting old and eyes are-
Ross LLC. And so the Beazer applied for the annexation, but they had permission from the property owners to do so. They are aware and signed off on the petition. for
like a
annexation.
purchase to buy type.
Yeah, I'm sure they have it under
Contract.
contract at this point as part of their due diligence. Annexation is part of that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions for Ben? Someone for Beazer Home to hear? Come forward, please.
You can only take times this.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the Plan Commission. My name is Brian Toohey. My address is 50 South Meridian. I'm attorney representing Beazer Homes. Thank you for hearing our petition for the voluntary annexation. Ben did a fine job of laying out what we're thinking about here. Beazer Homes would appreciate the recommendation to annex the property. The single-family designation is fine with them. They don't have a fully developed plan yet, but when we do, we're going to have to come back before this board and present a fully developed plan, whether it's in that single-family designation or one of the other single-family designations. I agree with what Ben said. The plan would be to eventually annex up to 112 acres, which he showed you on that site map. It is under contract by Beazer. It's to the north of 300 North. It's to the west of 39 and east of the railroad tracks over there to the west. Sort of wraps around the Duval business enterprise there. And in terms of timing, I think we'd be back before this body before the end of the year, if not the first of next year. And it'd be a year or so before there would actually be, assuming everything would be approved, it would be a year or so before there would actually be any homes on this site. And here with me tonight is Ann Klock, who's the Director of Land Acquisition for Beazer, and we thank you for your time.
Okay. Would she like to speak? Would Ann like to speak? No? Okay.
She's a fine speaker, but she
Okay.
declines your
All right.
presentation.
All right. Just want to make sure you had a chance. Yeah. All right. Anyone else on the board have a question for him?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. All right. Thank you. Ben?
I'm just getting my paper so I can take notes.
Okay. Anyone else on the board have something they want to question? If not, I'll open up the public hearing for this. And remember, again, we're 3 minutes to speak, and be sure you give your name and address. Okay? The public hearing is now open.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mark Michael. I live at 815 West 300. First, I'd like to clarify that the town does not own property up to 300. Our whole street, for the most part, maybe one property, is all outside the city limits. So I moved here after I retired from the military after 28 years, looking for an area that I could get out and be away. I looked at the infrastructure here and saw that it would be some time, or at least I thought, before you would be building in that area. I say that because expansion is inevitable. However, you need to build the infrastructure to support that expansion, not the other way around, where you bring in all these houses and don't have the infrastructure to support it. Our road is already dangerous enough, as skinny as it is, and as fast as people go up and down there. And in order to make it so this development could happen, then the developer should need to widen that road and upgrade the railroad tracks that are there to make that a safe road. I don't know if it's going to open up to 300 or 39, but either road currently is unsafe for that neighborhood to open to. There's already tons of wrecks at 39 and 47, and this would just bring more traffic in there, and we would have even more wrecks there if that's not upgraded also. The infrastructure, from what I've heard, again, I've only lived here 8 months, but I watched the meetings, and from everything I've heard, it is already taxed to its limits. We're building underground holding tanks in order to get by with the infrastructure we have, and it's just going to get worse. Our neighbors' houses are flooding, and if you put a neighborhood across the street, it's only going to have more runoff into that area when you get that blacktop. And lastly, I talked about how unsafe the road is. First responders. The ideal ratio is 2.6 cops to every 1,000 residents. With my math, patrolman-wise, we have 1.3. Even if I counted all the staff in there, it's only 2.3. Still, don't meet the minimum suggested requirements. You bring in all these residents, now you go even lower. Without building the infrastructure to support this, I think we need to wait and get the infrastructure in place and then do the expansion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to speak?
I'm Sandra B. Love. I'm Sandra B. Love, and I live at 725 West 300 North. And my concern is drainage. The area is rife with slopes. Our property, property to the west, two properties to the west of us, property to the east of us, all acreages drain in an underground drainage system over to the northern ditch. The biggest part of that area on the southern side does drain on that area. Also, not only does it use that drain, the property to the east use the drain that's underground, they have another under the road system, a culvert that drains it. So there's a lot of drainage coming. As a matter of fact, it was, the field was re-drained just recently in the last few years because there is so much drainage and it was having some flooding. So that's something to be concerned about. Also, there isn't really a decision been made. It sounds like about 300 being used as a bypass of traffic in the city of Lebanon. For a while, it was going to be all north. The bypass was going to be all north of 300, but then they changed their mind, and there was a Habitat, Lindner's, I think. They didn't want that, and so then they were going to make 300 the 4-lane. So as I spoke to this young man, he said there wasn't really any decision being made about that because it's up to the state. A new home is a large investment. I certainly would want to know if there was going to be a 4-lane bypass that was talked about being planned to get semi-traffic out of the area. In fairness to any someone purchasing the homes, they need to know, is there going to be a semi-bypass, to make their decision there. The other thing is that the ditch to the north gets really filled up with water already, because it's draining that field and it's draining the properties on the south too. So, that needs to be considered. Is it going to be adequate to take care of the drainage? And is the drainage in that ditch, is the place, I don't know where it goes. Does anybody else know? It takes care of a lot of the drainage, is the area that it's going to be.
Ma'am, your time is up.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Lorraine Ann Cole, and I'm at 765 West, 300 North, and I'm as well would like to object to them rezoning. I guess my concern is infrastructure, like everyone else has addressed, because I kind of experienced this already with the rezoning that occurred behind our properties when Mr. Lieberman started building new doubles behind us. It was annexed without a plan, and after that we found out that he didn't have enough space for what he was building, and he took property from ours before we even knew it was happening, and so we lost property to him, and also he had to ask for a variance on the size of his property just so that he could build his property. That's what happens when you don't have a plan before you start to do something. I've built many things, including hospitals and homes, and I can tell you, without proper planning, you don't have a good end result. And so I think it's important that we think about many things that maybe haven't even been considered, like schools, and particularly the police coverage and the health and safety of individuals along that road. There's still farming out in that area, and so you have all of this agricultural equipment going up and down our road already, and that's already dangerous to individuals. And then you have the railroad tracks there that's on a hill. In the wintertime, you have the problem of that area with a lot of ice because of where it is. There's just a lot of drainage problems in that area, as other people have alluded to. I just think that we need to understand what's being built there and where the access will be. If you don't have a plan, you don't have an outcome. So again, I've listed a number of things. I left it in the office earlier today. Did you think about gas, utilities, sanitation, a system that's already taxed, overburdened in this city, and you want to do an annexation out there? Not a good idea. Water, what are you thinking about there? I mean, wells or city water, drainage, cable, fire and police, school changes, effects on our taxes. What about voting? How's that going to be arranged? Is this just for the mayor? Traffic, city, mail routes, kids getting off buses right at the hills. And I could go on and on. But I just want people to think ahead of time before you start, well, let's just annex and then build. And my final statement is to say that they can build homes in that area right now with the way that it's zoned. So why ask for an annexation? It's already zoned that they can build homes on that property. So my question to you is, why are they asking for an annexation? Is this just more taxes? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay, come forward, please.
Hi, my name's Linda Delpa. I live at 2980 North State Road 39, and I have a major concern about the traffic it's just going to create because it's already horrendous now. Because I live at the second house south on the west side of 300. And so traffic comes up there at that corner, and they don't even hardly come to a stop, and they roll out. And I have to wait and wait and wait to get out of my driveway because the traffic's so bad. And you add a housing addition in there, it's going to make it much, much worse. And, you know, I mean, what are they going to do about, you know, there's, I don't know how many accidents have happened just recently at that corner there, at 339. How are they going to address that issue now? I mean, it's going to make it worse. So, I mean, we're going to continue to have more and more accidents happening. You know, it's just putting more people in danger, I'm concerned, you know. Also, what about, how's that going to affect us now when you do the annexation? I'm on septic and well right now. Are you going to force me to hook up to city, you know, sewer and water? You're going to force me to pay, you know, for something that I don't have to pay? I'm on limited income. I don't have the extra money, you know, worried about forking out for that. You know, so how's that going to be addressed to those of us who, you know, have those kind of concerns? So that's my question right now is those two main things, the traffic and, you know, and my personal, you know, effect, you know, with about water and everything. So that's me.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to speak?
My name is Chris Duvall. My address is 3230 North 39. We've been living there for 45 years, 46 years. Had my business for 42 years. I've tried to be good neighbors with everybody in the area. My concern is I own a piece of property, a rental house on 300, 505. We do have a lot of water problems running from the Brandenburg properties and coming down to 300. The ditch on 300 is not very good. The ditch on 39 is not very good to drain the water. So that's been a problem for many years. I had a grandma lived on 300 for 30 some years. I had water problems there too with her house. The only other thing I can say, I don't really care what to do with the property. I don't like to see houses going behind me, but that's something I can't control. But the traffic on 339, I run a wrecker service. We probably get at least one wreck a month. People died on 300 North before at that intersection. You know, like the first guy said, the infrastructure is not very good there. I mean, the way they got people coming up, and I don't know how you're going to fix it all, but I agree with him. It should be fixed before you annex it in, because once you annex it in, a lot of things are gonna fall through the cracks. And, 300 don't have no berm on it. The railroad track's really dangerous. It's kind of like 250, not a very good setup. Whit Road was not a very good setup with all the developments over there. I just, I guess begging you guys to think about it before you do it, because I think the road conditions need to be addressed before anything else does. And thank you for listening to me.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else would like to come forward? Not seeing anyone coming forward, I'll close the public hearing. Ben?
I'll generally address what I can now. Certainly, we'll have more detailed plans at some point in the
Right.
future when they submit those, but in terms of just some of the general comments, in terms of traffic, we certainly share their concerns about how traffic will be affecting the area. Any development plan or preliminary plan that comes in will be required to do a traffic study, and we'll look in terms of specifically what the impact that'll have on the existing road system, how it'll change the level of service, whether there's any passing lanes or turn lanes required or anything like that. Another thing to keep in mind, though, is much of 300 North isn't in the city's jurisdiction. It's primarily a county road at this time, so there's limited things that we could do because we don't have jurisdiction on the road. But certainly at their entrances where they might be proposed, we can look at whether XL, decel lanes and passing blisters and things like that are going to be needed. The other thing to keep in mind is State Road 39 is not our road either. So again, we can provide recommendations for things that might need to be done to that intersection, but we can't do them ourselves. It's part of the state's jurisdiction, so it has to go through NDOT, and they'll dictate what does and does not happen. However, if we provide them a traffic study that shows certain things might need to be done, that certainly can help dictate or start that discussion with the state. So certainly there are some things we can do to at least uncover and understand what the issues might be based on additional development out there, and then we'll have to work with other agencies to try to get those implemented. I know the infrastructure was mentioned a few times, that our existing infrastructure is overburdened. We just did an expansion of the sanitary plant just in the last couple of years. We have about 5,000 EDUs available at the plant, which is equivalent to 5,000 homes. So we have tons of capacity at the sanitary plant. And actually on the north side there, northwest side, there's a major sanitary sewer not too far south of there with plenty of conveyance capacity in it. So they do need to figure out how to get to that sanitary pipe, but there's plenty of conveyance capacity there. And certainly the water in the areas. Our primary source of water comes from northwest of town, so we have a 24-inch water main that's just to the west of there, and that's about as big as a water line gets, so there's plenty of water in that area as well. So we actually do have significant capacity on the north and northwest sides to address any sort of additional development. Drainage is an issue and a concern that everybody has, and we all have too. And I'll again address this generally like we usually do when we discuss developments. We have a drainage ordinance that provides requirements for any new development, essentially to create no net new impact on the site. So what they'll be required to do is both address the existing drainage pattern and look at the tiles that are in the area, the ditches in the area, how that water's collected, and they're going to have to accommodate that. But then they also have to look at the additional impervious surface they're creating in their development, and they need to detain that water on site. They can't just let it run off into the ditches and run off into the regulated drain in that area. They have to detain all that water on site, and then our ordinance has requirements in terms of how fast they can release that water into the adjacent water bodies, which in this case, the outlet is probably that regulated drain that kind of runs diagonally through the site. So there's requirements on what that release rate can be so that they detain it and then release it at an acceptable rate to keep the water just from flowing, sheet draining off that property into the ditch, which is essentially what it does now. It's that the water flow is not regulated at all right now, which is why creeks overflow when it's during heavy rains. So this, I can't suggest to you that it's going to make the situation better, but it definitely will not make it worse because they have to look at what sort of water they're going to create, detain it on the site, and then release it acceptably. In terms of the State Road 39 reroute, again, that's primarily going to be dictated by the state, but I know with the project they're going to plan right now with the flyover for the existing Lafayette Row exit, it's very, very highly unlikely that they're going to spend the money to do that flyover and then come right back later and then put a traditional interchange in that area. So the likelihood of State Road 39 reroute happening on 300 North, I think, is getting less and less every day, and Kevin can probably provide some additional feedback there. But I don't think that they're spending, about $18 million on that flyover. I don't think they're going to spend $18 million to do that flyover and then come back and tear it out and put a traditional interchange there in the next 5 years. So I think with what the state's doing now, I think it's less and less likely that a State Road 39 reroute is going to happen on 300 North. And so that's just some changes. I know they also talk about other services like schools and police. I can't address specifically anymore, but my understanding a few years ago is the schools have plenty of capacity. Now, depending on the actual facility itself, they've got to work on those things, but overall in the entire school system, they have plenty of capacity. And they've actually mentioned that to us several times. And I know they're going through master planning process right now on their facilities to figure out with some of the other developments that are already proposed and some of the other things coming, how they might need to address that in terms of capacity and facilities. So I know they're definitely constantly working on that actively. There was a question about what the annexation is going to do to them in terms of whether we were going to force hookups in terms of requiring people either to annex or require them to hook up. That is not something the city will do and not something we're legally permitted to do. If they want to annex and they want to connect, they can voluntarily, just like this property owner is seeking a voluntary annexation. If they choose to be annexed and choose to hook up, that's totally on them. The city is not going to force that or require that. There certainly wouldn't be any requirements for that. So those are some of the general things. There may be some things specifically the applicant may want to address, but in terms of the general overarching thing, we're going to get a lot more detail on all these things as this goes through the process. Right now, we have to get the property annexed. We don't even have the potential to review some of the specific site design. We don't have jurisdiction until it's annexed, so we can't legally even review those things. But we'll definitely get into that in further details and get down the road.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to come back and speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Plan Commission. In a general response, I thought Ben covered everything, but I think it's important to keep in mind this is just an annexation petition for voluntary annexation, and anything that we would do, any plan would necessitate us to come back before this body and present a plan that would show things like how we will drain the property. It would show things like how we would access the property, and as Ben mentioned, a traffic study would be performed, and then what roadway improvements may be needed because of additional traffic. I think it's also important to note that the first home would not be built on this property unless we knew that we had adequate sanitary sewer service and adequate water service to serve the homes that we would build. And maybe this is sort of sums it up. If this is annexed in and then we come in and file a petition for rezoning, there'll be public notice, and I know that Beezer's normal course is, in addition to the legal notice, we would invite all the surrounding property owners that get that notice to a meeting, an informational meeting, before we came to the Plan Commission to talk to them about, okay, here's how we see this developing, here's the type of homes we propose to build, here's how we would improve the roadways, here's how we propose to, preliminarily at least, to drain this site and address the infrastructure, traffic, issues of new folks coming into this area. We'd explain that to our neighbors. That's not to say that everybody would be in agreement, but they would have a heads up before we came before the Plan Commission as to how this acreage would be developed. So with that, we would respectfully request that the annexation be moved on to the council and with a favorable recommendation, and that we pledge to you that we'll see you again when we file a rezoning petition. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody on the board have questions?
Ben, real quickly, am I correct? I know someone said something in regards to the railroad track, and if I remember correctly, that railroad track is supposedly supposed to have an upgrade to that. Is that still in the works? Is that still something, or am I
I don't know that there's anything imminent. I know that would be under CSX jurisdiction because it's their railroad.
Right, it's
I know
not
they
the
tried
city,
to come
but-
through, about 3 years ago and do some improvements and couldn't work out the road closures with the county.
And that's what I'm talking about. Is that something that's still, I'm just asking, is that something
It
that
could
you
be-
guys know anything about?
The way I understand from CSX, it could be decades before they come back because they've got a schedule to go around the entire country. And so when they tried to do it a couple years ago, they couldn't work out the road closures, so they just went on to their next item on the list, and we don't have any indication when they might get back around.
I just didn't know if that was still out in the
Yeah,
Circle.
CSX had already planned some upgrades, but when they kind of had to skip over this project to go to the next one,
The
unless you
city
heard
has
anything
nothing to
further,
do with
Kevin.
that at all.
No, we had approved the road closure on 250 North for them to make those signal upgrades.
Right.
The county would not issue the road closure permit.
Right.
So they moved on and they weren't going to come and just do one crossing upgrade. They did say, yes, Ben's right, that, well, we'll come back to it. When, we don't know. We also know this is a really low volume track for them, somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 trains a day. So it's not
High
a real
priority.
high priority either.
I just was curious because I hadn't heard anything else
Yeah.
as far as, I knew it was supposed to, but I didn't know if that was something that they were going to continue to do or if that was.
They essentially said that they'll get back around to it, but it's based on what other projects are now on the priority list.
Okay. Just curious.
But it's certainly still on their radar.
Okay.
Timing isn't the question.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Ben, one of these first speakers, I believe the first guy, said something to the extent of that Lebanon did not touch 300 North. Can you show us on a map where that does in fact touch?
Yeah, this map actually hasn't been updated because this annexation of the Brandenburg property just happened about 5 or 6 months ago. So our map, our GIS hasn't even been updated yet. But if they want to pull the screen back up, the property that is in, it's not city-owned property, that is in city limits is this Brandenburg property right here that you see. So that property right there has been annexed to the city as of just like 3 or 4 months ago. So that is where this property is adjacent to existing city limits, is on this southern border. The rest of these properties on 300 North are not in city limits, that is correct. But this singular property, Brandenburg, right here, is within city limits.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
So it's just the one property?
Just one property. It's a significantly sized property, but it's just that one property that's in city limits.
So Ben, it's safe to say with this annexation, it would begin the process, but everything that everybody addressed in this room would come back to us.
Absolutely.
With a site plan, so then we could debate drainage, traffic,
Absolutely.
ins and outs.
Yeah, the review hasn't even started yet. There's a lot of work to do before this actually becomes something that's a reality under construction. We haven't anything to review. We haven't looked at site layouts, lot layouts, so I mean, that's all stuff that we're going to hammer on quite a bit over the next few months before it even gets back to this board. So yeah, we'll be looking, it goes through our technical advisory committee that looks at drainage and streets and all those components, 11 utilities, we'll look at it. County Surveyor's Office is part of that, so again, looking at that regulated drain as the potential outlet, they'll be looking and see how that gets done, and it has to be approved by the County Surveyor's Office. So there's a lot of technical things that we're gonna have to beat on them quite a bit yet to get them to the point where it comes back to the Plan Commission.
So technically, we could annex, there could be something come and we could not approve it.
Absolutely. Yeah, this annexation in no way guarantees approval of a development. But we have to do the annexation before we can get to that point because we don't have jurisdiction on the site. And the reason they're requesting annexation is primarily because of city utilities. So there's certain things you can do in the county under their zoning and on well and septic, but they want to be on city utilities, water and sanitary sewer. So that's a significant part of why they're deciding to annex to the city.
Thank you.
Clarify to me, if they decided not to annex and build through the county, they don't have the same drainage requirements.
They do actually.
Do they?
Actually, the county's drainage ordinance is almost exactly the same as ours.
So they still would have to do.
Yeah, they still would go through a very similar process.
But they have no public utility system, so they have no sanitary or water sewer
Right.
system.
And again, just a quick reminder, this isn't necessarily a positive or negative recommendation on the annexation. All the Plan Commission does is provide a recommendation to the council on the zoning classification that should be established as part of the annexation process. So you're not actually providing a recommendation on the annexation itself, you're just recommending the zoning as part of the annexation process.
You're asking for an SF1, right?
Just SF zoning district.
Okay. Okay, I would entertain a motion on docket number 2144.
I make a motion to recommend the single-family residential zoning classification to the Common Council for the proposed annexed territory.
So moved.
Give a second.
John Lastly,
Yes.
Dan Bayshore,
Yes.
Kevin Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock,
Yes.
Brian Tandy,
Yes.
Ellie Mullen,
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
And just for, I know we've got a number of people in the audience curious about this. So the first reading of the annexation ordinance will be next Monday evening, and then the potential adoption of the annexation ordinance will be again then the first or the second Monday or actually it'll be the Tuesday because Monday is a holiday.
Right.
So it'll be October 12th, I think is the Tuesday. And that would be the second reading of the annexation ordinance. At that point, then there's a 30-day waiting period. If it's annexed, there's a 30-day waiting period before the annexation is effective. At that point, then additional plans may be coming back to our office and be submitted for additional review and approval. So any additional steps that would come back to the Plan Commissioner Council would require additional notices. So all these neighbors would be again notified when that happens.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is docket number 2147. IMI Lebanon requesting development plan approval to construct a new concrete plant to be located at 2450 South Indianapolis Road. The property is zoned SF Single Family Residential. Ben?
All right, this is the existing IMI facility on South Indianapolis Road. If they want to bring up the screen for you and kind of give you an overview of the site. This is the existing site that you see here. They've got a processing facility kind of in the center. They did purchase, I believe it was a year and a half ago, the additional site here to the north. And then what is happening here is that one of their existing facilities on the south side of Indianapolis is being closed as part of the State Road 37/I-69 project. So they're essentially moving the facility that's down here to this site and essentially taking the existing building down there, moving it on a truck up here, and they're going to plop it down on this site. With that, with what they're doing, there's going to be a significant amount of drainage improvements that are going to need to happen out here. And so with the additional building and then also the drainage improvements, we did require them to come through for a development plan approval, which is what is before you here tonight. There is a little bit of history here in terms of the use itself. This did go to the Board of Zoning Appeals earlier this year in April. This site is zoned SF, single-family residential. When it was in the county, I believe it was zoned industrially, but when we annexed the 65 corridor, we took in everything under our default SF zoning district, just like this last annexation in front of you. So we created some non-conforming uses down here. So this is in fact a legal existing non-conforming use, which doesn't allow them to expand it without some sort of approval. So they did go to the April Board of Zoning Appeals meeting and get a use variance approval to allow a concrete production facility on the site. At that same meeting, then they also got a variance for height. The existing building out there is between 80 and 100 feet, and this new facility they're bringing here is approximately the same height. So they get a variance approval to allow that height. So then, since that time in April, they've been working to get the drainage determined on the site, get the facility itself located, and then work with us on some landscaping requirements to buffer the south side of the property. And I'll bring up the site design here, give you a little bit of an idea of what is going to take place. So this, try to zoom in a little bit here without making it too big. This gives you an idea of the improvements that are going to take place. So the building itself is going to sit down towards the south end of the property. You see here, the existing facility is kind of in the middle. So this will sit down on the south end of the property here. I'll let them explain exactly how the operation works itself. But it does meet a 25-foot setback from the south property line, which is our industrial setback. The additional detention will kind of be on this northwestern corner that you see here. They'll provide additional detention. And actually then the outlet is to the south along Indianapolis Road. So there's storm sewer pipe. You can kind of see it represented here heading out to Indianapolis Road, and then it heads down off-site to the south in order to get to an appropriate outlet. So those are the primary improvements that are being made as part of this project, is replacement of that building and then the detention, which is kind of both pretty important things. And then they also, see if I can find it quickly here, the landscape plan always hides. Second to last, I'm hearing. But before the standards, yeah. Here we go. So in terms of landscaping, since the building is down here at the south end of the property, we're primarily concerned, I guess there's two things happening here. They did install a berm along this north property line, and then one of the conditions of their previous approvals for this site in order to incorporate it into their overall site was that they maintain the fence row. Well, since they built the berm, obviously they took the fence down, so we're going to be working with them to reinstall that fence along the top of that berm, so there would be both a berm and a fence along that north property line. And then at the south, there is an existing tree line on about two-thirds of that south property line. Just a little too far here. And so what we've asked them to do is basically look at that existing tree line that you kind of see represented here and inventory all of the 6-inch caliper or larger trees, and they've done that. And then we've asked them to kind of infill with trees where there's gaps in those larger trees. So that's what you see represented here is an additional about a dozen trees that they're going to plant to kind of fill in the gaps on that existing tree line. And there's an area kind of in the middle of the property where the building's located where there isn't an existing tree line, so we've asked them to plant a double row of evergreen trees in that area to provide a significant screen on that south property line for the building to the south. So that's the primary source of landscaping and screening that you see on this property, a fairly significant screening requirement that you see there. So that's kind of the extent of the improvements you see on this site, building, placement, detention, and landscaping. With that, again, I won't go through all of the technical comments from the TAC committee, but they have addressed all those TAC comments of date. We did still place a condition that they address any remaining TAC comments on the approval, but as of date, they have addressed everything, and we're confirming those and verifying those items. Have went through essentially every element in terms of the plan itself. So just to finalize that, then planning staff finds compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance requirements and recommend approval of the development plan contingent on the following condition. Again, that they adequately address any remaining TAC comments before moving forward with building permits. Yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions from the board? Ben?
Ben, didn't we have issues when Sanders built their building in regards to either water or sewer?
You mean Weber?
I'm sorry, I don't mean Sanders.
Okay, yeah.
Apologize.
So there is no
Weber.
water and sewer in this area. There is no
Okay.
water and sewer. That is the issue.
Okay.
And so this is on well and septic here.
It is,
Yeah.
okay. That's what I wanted to make sure that, okay.
Yeah, this site is probably 1 mile plus from the closest public utilities, which are in Whitestown.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, would the applicant come forward, please?
Good evening, Mr. President and Commission members. Thank you for having us. My name is Willie Hall with Crossroad Engineers at 115 North 17th Avenue, Beech Grove, Indiana, 46107. I'm here on behalf of Irving Materials Incorporated and Mr. Adam Watts.
My name is Mr. Adam Watts. I'm at 8032 State Road 9, Greenfield, Indiana, 16140.
Thank you, Ben, for the introduction. And so without kind of rehashing a lot of that, just to dive in a little bit deeper to a few items that I think are pertinent, is I think Ben did a really good job of where the project has been and the previous approvals through the zoning BZA. Since that time, we've worked with the engineering office and the county as well, because we outlet to Fishback Creek, which it outlets there now, not very well. We're improving the outlet to Fishback Creek. So we've worked with the County Drainage Board as well, and we've received approval from the County Drainage Board, again, subject to finishing the approval through the drainage consultant that's working on behalf of you guys and the County Drainage Board. As part of that drainage improvement that's been indicated, that was a big part of this project, was not just looking at what we're doing, but also over time, there's an existing facility on the site that has gotten smaller over time. So we've reclaimed that volume of storage on the site, and then also for the increased use that increased impervious cover, we're correcting for that as well. In total, we're adding about 130,000 cubic foot of detention storage on the site. What happened out of the existing facility is it was overburdened, it would overtop, and it would just overland. It would flow south, west, and there was an existing pipe flowing south to Fishback Creek that was it's sedimented in and kind of blocked frequently and often. So part of this project is also improving the outlet. So we're taking it out of the pond now. We're going to head over to Indianapolis Road and then head south to Fishback Creek. Like I said, that has been approved by the county drainage board already. We have heard some feedback from some of the residents next to us about the location of that pipe within the right-of-way of Indianapolis Road, and in a neighborly effort, all the alignment was in the right-of-way and an acceptable location to the city. We're going to go ahead and move it. It would be west, northwest a little bit, to be out underneath an asphalt turn lane shoulder, as to limit any impact to the adjacent property with that construction. So kind of preemptively, we've heard that, we'll make that revision to extra cost for the development, more road patching and all that, but we're going to make that change. So that's from a drainage. We're also water quality, post-construction water quality measures that were not in place before. We're putting those in place as well. The other big thing is the screening that we heard. So Ben really kind of hammered all of it out, though. I think it's 12 deciduous trees, and then also 56 maybe evergreen trees as well in that south boundary. And then as soon as we can start moving dirt again and finishing the site after this development plan is complete, they'll finish the wall, the fence, the berm and the fence to the north boundary. So north boundary is screened in that fashion, berm and fence. The west, there's a lot of trees over there that we're preserving all that. And then to the south, we're enhancing the screening that's there and then providing a substantial number of trees onto that. So I think to this point, you know, we've tried to comply, or we have complied with everything that's been asked from the city and the county perspective. So I'll turn it over to Adam what he would like to speak about, but again, on behalf of IMI, we're just here to request approval of the development plan tonight.
I just have a few things that I want to touch on. IMI bought this property from Prairie Materials, I believe, April of 2016. The facility, you know, it has not looked, you know, it's concrete ready mix plant, so it hasn't looked very pretty. One of our goals into moving our Belmont plant from Indianapolis here is to upgrade everything from a cosmetic standpoint. And I think that's what the city of Lebanon would also like to see. You know, we do know there's a lot of growth coming up to this area. Another thing I want to say to everyone on the board is we do have another plan in the works for a ready mix plant in Westfield. We do have a plant here on 4th Street. These two plants, if the demand is there, we have some plans for our 4th Street ready mix plant. However, right now, I can't make any commitments to that due to the fact that we don't know what that demand is going to look like as of today. That is what I want to stress to the board, that we do have future plans here. I talked to the Wilsons today, and you know, we want to be neighborly, and I think that we can meet everything from a satisfactory standpoint from both parties and the neighbors of Lebanon. And if you know, the board has any questions for me, feel free to ask.
Anyone have questions for the applicant? The only question I have for you, what are you going to do about this plant you already have here in the city? Is that going to go out there?
Say that one more time, sir.
Is the plant that IMI has here in the city, what are you guys going to do to that?
Well, we don't know about that yet until we see how these two different developments react to demand. So I can't answer your question right now.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. We're we'll open it up to the public. Anyone like to speak, please? Remember, you have 3 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Gary Hayes. I live at 3720 Indianapolis Road. I've got a little 3-acre parcel down there. I've lived there for 38 years. And this plant is my neighbor right to the north. A neighbor by sight. I've also been your neighbor since 2008 when we got forcibly annexed down there by Lebanon. And it was an interesting time. I went to all the meetings about the annexation, and I heard the stories. Well, the fiscal plan that was generated for that annexation called for 3,486 homes to be built down in that annexation by 2019, and they were going to spend over $20,000 to put sewers and water down there. Of course, nobody knows what's going to happen in the future, but I'd say those estimates were pretty far off. We have maybe 1 or 2 houses that have been built since then, and no sewers, no water. They did buy the power lines, so we have had some capital improvement. We're on the Lebanon electric system now. But my concern and what I don't like about what is happening in my neighborhood is the way this development is happening, particularly this development. Since in the last few years, we've had all this dirty industry coming in, and I call it dirty because it's all heavy truck traffic industry, generates dust and dirt, a lot of noise. That's what we're getting down there. And how are we getting it? We're getting it on single-family zone ground. We're not even changing the zoning. We're having variances granted. And what's that do to the zoning laws? What does that do to our rights as homeowners down there to be protected by zoning laws? We have nothing. We have no protection from the city of Lebanon on our zoning. When you can grant a variance to permit something that is completely outside the zoning, and you can see the zoning's a quirk down there, but it's not. It's zoned down there because there's no utilities down there. That's why it's single family. That's why you're only going to build single family things in that area. So I feel like we've been completely neglected down there, and now there's plans to build across the interstate this new subdivision, Waterford, and they're going to get the sewers and stuff, and in the meantime, you're going to ruin my side of the interstate for anything but this dirty industry. Things that should not be built on well and septic. It's in your own city planning rules. You don't build these kind of things. You don't expand these kind of things. A non-conforming use since 2008, and to expand it, you have to get the approval. You have to go through the proper process. But all that has to be said is, well, it's not going to affect the existing residences. Just to make that simple, flat statement makes it okay. And it's ludicrous to say that this facility won't affect my friend's house, which is right on the property line. It's ludicrous to say that all that truck generated traffic and the dirt. I mean, I put up with it.
Time has expired, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else would like to speak?
Hi, I'm Teresa Wilson, 3510 South Indianapolis Road, 46052. We're the neighbors of Lebanon, excuse me, IMI. We actually, I think we were annexed by the city of Lebanon in 2016, I believe. Oh, 2008. Oh, well, it's even longer than I thought. And like Gary said, we do not have sewer, we do not have water. Personally, I'm kind of fine with that. I would like to have toilets that flushed, actually, the first time, but that's okay. But we could solve a lot of problems if Lebanon would just do what they were going to do and get us those things, since they, made us part of the annexation. They obviously didn't want us to go with Whitestown, but be that as it may, that's where we are down today. Our house, Jerry Wilson and I, our house was built in 1882. So I think we have been there longer than a lot of people in this room have had houses. It was a church. It was called Gossett's Chapel. It was a bar called Keys Inn, which we do think that John Dillinger drank there, since he's allegedly stayed in a motel down the street at the Lakeview Motel. It was a school, and then it became a private home. Clark's got it. Yeah. So anyway, so this house has some history, although a lot of that history physically burned up in the fire at the courthouse. The one thing that we're concerned about, and I have talked with these people, and they've been very nice, they are trying to be nice, but I just want to make sure that, A, we don't run out of water in our well, that they don't take it all in their wells. We want to make sure that if there's some way, I know when Montgomery's owned it, they were very good stewards with cleaning the street. They actually had a street cleaner, I believe. Especially in the evening, it's just a dust storm. It's just a dust storm. And I know, we did live in the country. We don't live in the country now. But, if we could just get some type of cleaning done once in a while. If I told them about the noise with the trucks. If they're going to start getting, 100 more trucks in, is that going to be 24/7? And again, we're going to talk. I know we're going to talk about that. But if they're running all the time, we can't even leave our window open in our bedroom because of all the noise and the dust that comes in. Our house is blue, but you really can't tell. It looks kind of gray because you just spray it, but I don't want to spray because I want to use a bar water. So we're just a little bit worried about the drainage and what they're talking about doing, and I appreciate the fact that they're going to try to, and I do have some pictures if you want to see them. I don't know. This is our house and how they're going to try to go around our house. So we're very grateful for that, and because they would be knocking down a lot of our trees, and the trees we've grown because of the dust. So anytime a tree would start growing, we just let it go. The other thing is, are they going to have 1,000 streetlights back there? Because we already had the one, and they did turn it, so it's not like shining in our yard in the middle of the night. But yeah, now it shines in his yard down the street. So we're kind of worried about that. Are they going to demolish the front building as opposed to the back building that they're going to be building, or are they both going to be staying? And I am not concerned so much about beautification back in the cornfield. I would rather that they would do something, to the front of the existing complex, which is it's just bad, and there's several, weeds growing up and.
Okay, ma'am, your time is up.
Well, all right.
Thank you.
You want to see
Yes, send the pictures up and we'll look at them. Okay.
Hello, Jesse Pennington, 3310 South Indianapolis Road. My main concern right now is the increased traffic, the dust, the pollution that company makes, property values. If you guys say yes, what does that do to our property values? I don't know. Gary, I know the hours they run. I hear them at night. What's the production rate that's going to come out of that plant? It's a high-capacity plant, so therefore it's going to be a lot of concrete that comes out of that plant here in the future. Midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, that plant will fire up. It will rumble the ground. You'll hear the backup beepers. You'll hear everything. These things I do know personally because I drive a ready-mix truck. I know the amount of dust it makes. If you like sleeping at night, we do too. But if you don't like sleeping at night, come out here. You'll wake up. There is no peace out there at night, you know. And, you know, if it's a 1,000-yard day, you're looking at 100 trucks plus up and down that street. The dust that goes in, the dust that comes out. You know, you walk out here and you look across the street. You look at the mess over there. Come out to my house. My bedroom window looks south. And that's what you see, that mess down there. It's where they recycle their concrete, all the mess. I mean, you guys get up in the morning, drive out there, drive over here, and look what we put up with. You know? That's the concerns of us. You know? What about our property values? You know? You know what? Well, I did. I got that fixed.
Yep.
But
Well,
thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? Okay.
Name N2 3358 South Indianapolis Road. As per Indiana statutes, notice must be by certified mail with signatures within all neighbors within 300 feet. You guys failed as a city from Lebanon to do so. There were no signatures, and not all the neighbors were notified. This was brought up to Mayor. In the paper that we received from Tonya Thayer, there were no notifications of where the engineering prints were to be viewed publicly as to what was to be built. We as neighbors, we still don't even know currently what's to be built or any kind of plans. That there is supposed to be on the Indiana statutes, and that was failed as well. So there are two things that automatically make this meeting null and void. All adjacent properties are zoned single family. Currently, the sound decibels in Lebanon are about 82, and that's roughly from the hours of 8 to 8. At 1 a.m. in the morning, they are running 92 decibels at the neighbor's property edge, which thereby puts them in violation. Numerous violation notices have been sent to the mayor's office about this, and they do this all night long. The neighbors here, they experience it all day long. All utilities need to be brought down. The main thing is potable water, and obviously sanitary as well. The problem is all the wells around there, they run dry during the summer. Right now, the wells barely pump, and that's just, you know, it's not even a bad year per se. Currently, the plant is running about 25 loads a day, and they're going to have a capacity of 175 loads a day. So that's going to be a seven-fold increase of what they're using water-wise, and we're already having water issues. So they need to bring sanitary water down there. They use about 12,000 gallons right now a day of water. With their increased capacity, they use about 400 gallons per truck. They will be going from 12,000 gallons to 60 to over 100,000 gallons a day. There's not enough water to support this. IDEM has been notified of this, but they have yet to get back on this. The trucks on site that the neighbors have been complaining about, they go about 50 miles an hour. I've clocked them over 62 miles an hour, and they use what's called Jake brakes, the engine brakes that we all know that are just obnoxious. There's no zoning or any kind of anything from Lebanon that says you can't use J brakes. This is a quiet zone. Everything around it single family. You guys need to put some landscaping along Indianapolis Road. I mean, that's just a given. I mean, go look at, if you want to see some nice plants, go look at the Shelby Material Plant over in Westfield. This would only positively affect one property, that would be IMI. It's going to adversely affect all of the neighbors and harm all the neighbors. I ask that this docket be denied or at least continued, since the public was not properly and legally notified as to where the plans could be publicly viewed. And I ask that this docket be denied. Any questions?
Any questions? It's okay, thank you. Time is up. Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? Not seeing any others, we'll close this public hearing. Ben, would you like to come forward?
Sure,
Sure, I'll address a couple of items. There was a lot of questions about operations, so I'll let the applicant speak to those. In terms of the last speaker indicating that the neighbors weren't properly notified, we did review that before we came tonight. There are 9 property owners that are within the 300-foot requirement in terms of providing public notice. Those notices were mailed on August 13th, over a month ago, and we did verify tonight those were sent certified mail notice with return receipt. But that is done digitally now. A lot of the services do those digitally. We did verify that all 9 of those were delivered well over a month ago. So all adjacent property owners were properly notified. I do also have a verification of the notice in the paper, which is the other element of the notice requirements. So we have provided notice to all adjacent property owners and just tonight verified that they were all delivered to an individual and were received. So I'm not sure, there wasn't anything specific that he said about who was not notified, but we did verify that all 9 of those property owners that were adjacent have been notified, and I did verify that we did hit every property owner that's within 300 feet. So we did provide proper notice. I can review the actual notice itself. It does provide our address and phone number and contact information on the letterhead. In terms of the location for information about the application. It doesn't specifically say come to our office, but there is contact information on there for additional information about the application. And we have had plans available in our office for 45 days since the filing deadline. In fact, I can probably go pull them out over there in about 30 seconds. They're hanging in there for anybody that would want to view them. So they have been in there for about a month and a half. So that's what I can really address in terms of the actual notifications. They were sent out. In terms of the approvals on well and septic, that doesn't come through the city's office. I know that's county and related, so those approvals are outside of our jurisdiction. So in terms of what our water availability and what their wells need to look like and all those things, those are something that they would have to get approved from those jurisdictions before we could release any building permits for erecting that building. So there are processes in place to address those issues, and if they get approvals from those jurisdictions, then we would issue a building permit. We would not issue a building permits until they receive those things. So understand? Yes.
Yeah.
That area is all within
Right.
city limits, but there is not utilities available in the area. The expense to run utilities to those areas probably, Kevin, what do you guess, $30–40 million to service that area? And it's usually development driven. So in terms of, at the time that it was annexed, there was some anticipation of some development occurring over time down there, which has not happened. So in order for the city to extend those utilities, we're talking about putting a $40 million burden on existing ratepayers, which is a pretty big challenge in order to get something like that approved. So it's really development driven, so that some of that burden in terms of extending utilities can be borne by those developers. So that's primarily why. So certainly there were things that we might have anticipated in 2008 happening at that time. If you recall 2008, when that annexation happened, was right before a significant downturn in the economy, so there was no development in Lebanon for probably close to 10 years after that time. We didn't have development anywhere in the city for probably close to 10 years after that. And really just in the last 3 to 4 years, we've started to see development returning and additional attention paid to the south side of Lebanon and additional other areas. So
Ben, I have a question first. Can you explain when they say 300 feet is it from the place itself?
So it's basically from the perimeter of their property, extending out 300 feet in all directions. Any property that touches that 300-foot halo receives a notice. And there were 9 properties that are within that 300-foot halo.
Well, that's what I'm saying, even if they touch any part of it.
Correct.
Correct?
And so you've got a series of, there's a few homes right in the area, and then it's primarily the rest of it's all ag, so it doesn't take long before you get outside 300 feet. There's actually along Indianapolis Road there, I think there's 3 properties to the north, and only 2 of them are within 300 feet, so the third one was outside that. But I did double check all the distances, and we did hit all the 9 properties that are within 300 feet.
All right, would the applicant come forward, please?
Yes, thank you. I think we're going to tag team the response here a little bit. I have a few responses piggybacking on that with public notice. The public notices that we were responsible for, we just issued a Rule 5 public notices project will require IDEM Rule 5 permit for land alteration. And we did publish that in the newspaper already. I believe that's how you guys reached out to our general email. Oh, you got the letter? Okay.
Not certified, we got it.
Okay. But we also we issued the Rule 5, and on there it says, here's where you can, and it was in the paper here, we got the notification, and here, Crossroad Engineers, this is where our office is, this is where you can get them. So, that was in the paper. A couple things about, noise, like I said, we are increasing the buffering substantially. We're putting in a lot of additional buffering here. The question about doing it along Indianapolis Road, that's pretty tricky on this one. You guys have there's a substantial wetland on the site that takes up a good portion of the frontage. That all those trees are staying. That was a request to not touch that wetland area. So we got it mapped with a wetland specialist. But anyway, that was delineated and confirmed, and so those trees are staying as is, and we're not doing anything along there. Property values, I guess neither of us here are land appraisers, so I don't know if we can give a 100% educated response to that one, but it's an existing plant as it is, with substantial improvements that are happening from this project. Lighting, there's no additional site lighting that we're putting out there besides just whatever lighting's on the plant facility. I think that's pretty much
I just want to say one more thing. Mr. Mansu had mentioned the Shelby plant there in Westfield. The new IMI plant's actually directly next door. And one of the things that the Westfield Town Board directed me to do was to kind of replicate. It's a fantastic facility. Mr. Mansu had mentioned that, and we are going to replicate that. And I want to know, I want to let the Wilsons know that we're going to have a lot of painting. It's going to, just like Willie had said, we're doing a lot of buffering. The trees and the berm there along the side.
That's right, where it grows, right?
Exactly.
Well, it'll be, Willie.
Yeah, they'll be between our properties. There's 56 evergreen trees that are getting planted along that double evergreen row.
Does the Westfield plant have homes around it?
It certainly will soon. The property values are going to skyrocket. So I can guarantee you.
Around 32.
No. Hold on a second, okay?
But, and with the dust, we plan on doing a lot of portable water trucks, street sweeping, and, these are cosmetic issues that, due to the fact that if the board allows, this will be an active construction site. We intend on, when this plant is done and ready to produce, to be one of the nicest ready-mix facilities that we have in our fleet. And I really want to stress to the board that that's what we intend in this looking like.
Would that include, would it include concrete roads or asphalt? I'd say concrete first, what you're in, instead of stone roads.
Say that one more time, sir.
Are the roads to and from the plant going to be in concrete?
Well, there's a portion of the concrete, and then the remainder is aggregate.
The same way around where they load the trucks?
Majority of that's aggregate, yeah.
Is there some way you can add concrete in there?
There's concrete on the approaches, and there's some of that stuff that we're not touching, and leaving those approaches. The remainder of the site around for the pickup, or for the trucks, access and maneuvering is planned to be aggregate.
It won't be loose aggregate due to the weight of the trucks, so it'll be tamped down, but with the best management practices, the BMPs, with the water on the lot, we feel like that should be more than sufficient to keep the dust down.
Is that going to be every day that you water it?
Yes, sir.
Can I say something?
No, not yet. No.
Keith, is there something that we're required or that they would be required to end up having that paved or having that, I guess, maybe Ben or?
Ben is probably the.
Yeah. Is
he would
it
be-
something they have to have paved within a year? Is that? Am I hallucinating or?
No, I mean, it's existing aggregate, they're not adding any additional gravel, it's already gravel. So there's not necessarily a requirement that has to be paved. But it's so. Yeah, understood. Yeah, so it is existing gravel that will remain existing gravel. They're not adding any new gravel to the site.
But if it was concrete, it would eliminate some of the dust,
Some of it, but I mean, there's still going to be dust that's generated by a use like this, whether it's paved or not. I mean, it is still a concrete plant, so.
Dusty work.
Yeah, it is.
And a couple other things that I forgot to mention before, there were some concerns about noise and lighting. We haven't necessarily received a specific complaint about noise and lighting to our office, but we'd be happy to go down there and review noise levels and light levels to make sure they meet all of our requirements. We do have requirements for certain light levels at the property lines. We'd be happy to review those. I mean, it may have been mentioned at the last meeting, but we didn't receive a specific complaint to our office, but we'd be happy to review those things if somebody contacts our office and indicates that.
Okay.
We've got 2 code enforcement officers, we've got light meters, we've got sound meters. We can go down there and look at those things.
Yep. Okay, anything else, Ben?
No, I think, Adam, did you address all the ones that you could address?
Yeah, I think I've addressed everything. Before I leave the podium, to the Wilsons, you can call me anytime. I know we haven't been communicative lately. I promise you I will be anytime you need me.
Would you make that same offer to the rest of the neighbors?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay.
We're not pumping any water. Okay. So, yes, we have the BMPs that we have to meet for post-construction, so we're removing 80% of total suspended solids for all the water leaving the site. So they'll have, with the BMPs, there's O&M manuals, operation and maintenance manuals, that they'll be mandated to follow, inspections, cleanings. If there's deficiencies, they'll have to fix those. Like the pipe will tear down. Yeah, because a lot of what happens now is everything floods out of the basin and just sheet flows across the site into that. And I know there's been times where there's been,
Okay. Thank you. Ben, or you have something else you want to speak to?
I know, I'll just go into business cards.
Okay.
Is there a BMP, I have a question, is there a BMP for water filtration? Or truck wire washes to keep the dust down? All Westfield is included.
Sir, would you please stop? Come to the microphone. I've already closed the public hearing, okay? Thank you. Okay, I would entertain a motion on docket 2147. Property is zoned as single-family residential.
I'll make a motion to approve the development plan contingent on they complete the TAC comments for the city.
Okay. We have a second. Do I have a second? I don't hear a second.
I'll second.
You'll second it, okay. Okay, would you call the roll, please?
John Leslie,
No.
Dan Bayshore,
No.
Evan Krulik,
Yes.
Keith Campbell,
Yes.
Ashley Paddock. No. Brian Tandy,
No.
Allie Mullen,
No.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
In terms of what happened there, the motion did not pass, which does not mean it's denied, so you
Right.
need another motion.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Okay.
On the pictures that we saw, I mean, that site looked like it needed some massive cleanup.
Both sides.
Yeah. Based on what you said in the plans, I mean, is that part of your plan? Is that?
Yes, ma'am. It's a very old ready-mix site. The part of this whole rehabilitation process with moving the plant we also consider that a beautification project. We're gonna put a significant amount of money into the site. I mean, that's how I'm gonna answer that. So, Crossroads has helped us. I've been in front of the board in April. So that's something that we're going to have to do, and something that we want to do. It'll be a flagship for our central Indiana locations. As is now, we'll just continue running the operation as is, but obviously that's not what we want to do. We want to improve the parcel.
I'd like to ask you guys tonight, with some of the new information that we've been given and some of the questions we've been asked, we would appreciate a request to continue to next meeting to give us some time to make sure that we resolve all the concerns that you guys have, all the concerns that the Wilsons have, that we can get those addressed and make sure we can come back with a satisfactory plan.
Ben?
So what do you need, Ben?
What would also be, I mean, certainly it's up to you guys to make a motion, but if you do make a motion, continue, particularly for those that voted no on the motion, if you can provide us some direction on what we need to address. We've certainly heard some things about landscaping, paving, and something like that, but if there are specific reasons why you indicated no, please provide us some direction so we can go back and work with the applicant to make sure we address them appropriately by the next meeting.
So, Ben, would we need to put that on the next month's docket, or?
We still need a motion, so
Right.
right now, we don't have a motion that's passed. So if the will of the commission is to continue this to the next, you still have two different motions you can make: a motion to deny with some sort of indication of why it's being denied, that would have to pass, or a motion to continue to allow us to address some of these concerns with the applicant.
Okay.
And then if you have some direction on certain things that you would like us to address to make sure to address concerns that it had, again, keep in mind a development plan is where you're reviewing administratively to decide whether they've met the appropriate standards or not. So if there are certain standards that you don't think that they've met to your satisfaction, please indicate that so we can make sure to address them.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we continue it.
Okay.
I'll second that.
With a little more information, possibly a little more discussion between the neighbors and maybe some info from us as well.
Okay. We have a motion to continue in a second.
Second.
Okay. Would you
John
call the
Leslie?
roll?
Yes.
Dan Bayshore?
Yes.
Kevin Krulik?
Yes.
Keith Campbell?
Yes.
Ashley Paddock?
Yes.
Brian Tandy?
Yes.
Ali Mullen?
Yes.
Lori Gross?
Yes.
Do you have any directions you'd like to give them? The ones that voted no?
Fine.
So we can not have to come back and start all over again? But whatever it is that you didn't like to start with, say it now. Okay?
I think my biggest thing, here again, I've been out to the site. I've been out there on numerous occasions and drive by quite often. I think the area to the north of you is pretty overgrown and pretty obnoxious. I think that your area is the same. Not yours, sorry, I'm pointing over here. I guess my whole thing is, I go back to the dust. I think that's my biggest negative in the whole project. I mean, I've been out there and I can drive by, and you're not doing near the productivity that you're gonna do, I'm sure. I can drive by there with a trailer on, and I can look back and all I see is white coming up off the road. Now, granted, I mean, I understand that you're gonna go out and you're gonna try your best to clean it off and, you know, go out there with a sweeper and all that. I get that. But the problem is, I guess, that I would have is there a way that you can do a little better internally, meaning before the trucks get on Indianapolis Avenue? Is there something IMI can do to help eliminate some of that? If there is, great. If there's not, then there's not. But, I mean, that was my biggest thing, is because I know how dusty that actually is out there. And granted, I understand it's not downtown, and I'm not saying no to the whole project. I just think that those are things that if we could address and make better as neighbors on all sides, I think that would be great if we could.
I would concur with him and just add that the other thing I see is, since you're in the county and you're dealing off of a well, you're dealing with resource issues. If your capacity is going to increase so much, how's it going to affect your neighbors? Like, there might need to be a geological study or whatever to see what the well water capacities are around there, to give a better idea of whether it can really handle it or not.
Do you have, I'm asking IMI, do you guys have a well at that location right now?
Yes, sir, we have 3. Actually, I'm a geologist.
Come to the podium, please.
Thank you. We have 3 wells there, and I'm a geologist. I used to work for the DNR. The water use, Indiana has one water rights and use law. And the law reads, if you are a heavy producer, and the definition of that is over 100,000 gallons a day, which we are there. And let's say all of a sudden on a Tuesday, the Wilson's well doesn't work anymore. It's deemed legally that we are at fault for that, then I have to provide them with either a deeper well or another water use. Either or, that's the way the law reads. One of the things that I'd like to tell the board, we're not going to be, I'm looking at, I have about 8 trucks there at most. With our new facility, at the most, maybe 15. So I think that this idea of running 24 hours a day to build up the community, I think that's a little overblown. And again, there are other avenues that I can utilize from a truck standpoint. Another thing that I like to tell the board, we're having, just like everybody, having a lot of trouble with driver retention. A lot. I have a law that we can only utilize drivers 16 hours a day, and we're doing a lot of that. They're making a ton of money, but I'm doing a lot of that because no one wants to work. So, that's another thing that I want to stress. I know that's not your problem, but, bringing 60 trucks out of there that's just never going to happen. And it won't even in a great economy. I'm looking at 15 trucks out of this facility. And I appreciate the continuance. We'll be good neighbors. We'll talk with the Wilsons. And, I feel like next month we'll be able to provide the board with a lot better answers. More clarification.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Just want to echo what Dan said. I don't know a lot about water, but I want to understand more about the usage and the wells in the direct vicinity and how they'll be impacted.
Okay. Anyone else like to speak from the board? Okay.
Comment about
Up to the podium a minute, please.
Just south of us, Whitestown is growing like crazy. It could happen up by us too. We just have to have some water and some sewage. So, don't count us out. We'd like that maybe.
I don't think anyone's counting you out, I can tell you.
We'd like it. More about the excavating.
But you also have to understand, Whitestown is Whitestown, and they do whatever they want to do. We have no control over them.
And we're glad to be part of it.
So, I'm just saying, we have the same problems there we have with the county, so it's not just one of them. You have to work around them all, okay? Any other Yeah, I understand. I appreciate that. Anyone else have anything? I think we can have a motion. We don't have any other business. Anyone else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Second. We have a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, and have a good evening.